Welcome, good evening, everybody. Welcome to First Center for Spiritual Living, to our self-healing class. We meet every Thursday here to introduce a healing principle. We'll do a little bit of the work that's in the book You Can Heal Your Life, which is in my hands. If you've not heard of Louise Hay before, you'd probably be one of few. Louise Hay wrote the book You Can Heal Your Life, which has been translated in many languages. It's been 65 or 6 million copies sold, and it's done great work in the world. So Louise herself had her instruction here in New York City at our very center. We used to call ourselves First Church of Religious Science, New York. We're now First Center. Our place was founded by Raymond Charles Barker, who wrote the book, The Power of Decision. And Louise was a student here, and she was learning the very same principles that we teach here every single week. We meet on Sunday mornings at 10:45 for meditation and 11 o'clock for the actual lesson. So you're invited always to join us on this call for Thursdays, self-healing, or Sundays. And if you happen to be watching this right now on Instagram or later in the week or Facebook or YouTube, send us a message so we can then in turn invite you to this program or any of our programs. All of our programs are available to be reviewed, rewatched, or experienced on Facebook. If you want to interact, though, the thing is to ask us, send us your contact information so we can invite you into the Zoom calls. And you can do that now if you're listening now. So tonight, what healing principle am I going to bring up? We have some 45 lessons. Tonight's lesson started out about the importance of connecting and meditating. It's an easy lesson, so I'm going to be interacting with you a little bit and sharing some ideas. For those of you, again, who don't know who we are in relation to Louise Hay and You Can Heal Your Life, this is the center where she got her start. I encountered the book You Can Heal Your Life when it first came out, and I have been facilitating groups in Florida and all over, schools, treatment centers, spiritual centers, facilitating classes. I encountered the material at a time where people were struggling with a new pandemic. At the time was AIDS, and at a time where there wasn't medication. And at least twice a week there was facilitation of one of these groups where people would share, what they were doing along the lines of self-healing and changing their thinking and how our minds have an impact on the healing process. I'm sure many of you are here because of this book, and if you're not, we'll try to explain the healing principles to you for the first time. In the beginning of the book, You Can Heal Your Life, there's a page which is entitled Some Points of My Philosophy. And we can talk a little bit about them too once we get through a couple of things I need to read to you. If I were ever stranded and I didn't have this book or any other book, I think I'd be happy with this one page, which is one of the first few pages in the book. What we do in religious science and what Louise Hay would do is she would bring herself to a place where she would pause. We did a recent Sunday talk of taking a pause, learning to take a pause. During the COVID pandemic, we heard that word a lot too. Taking time to stop the action and reaction and slow it down enough where you can bring yourself to a place where the first step of our prayer process, affirmative prayer, is recognition. So we bring ourselves to a place where we can quiet the mind, where we can connect, where we can meditate, and where we can know all is well. And quieting the mind down and slowing the mind down, and so we're not in a place of reaction. We have lots of ideas in religious science that are so brilliant. But, the thing is, we have to create a space within ourselves so that we can hear them. So meditation and quieting the mind are important things to do. We attempt to become more mindful here. Thursday night in particular, I'm always asking the class, the listeners, to check in. At some point before this evening's over, we'll switch over and we'll listen to people's, sharing. And the question we're always asking is, what has it been like being you this week? I want you to start to become more mindful of, are you coming from a place of upset? Are you coming from a place of critical thinking? Are you coming from a place of anger? Or are you doing it the other way? See, if you're working this teaching the way we suggest, you're learning to live the affirmative life. So that would mean that you're attempting to shift from the problem to shift towards seeing things from the cup being full. I had a teacher years ago, for a short time, a few seminars actually, Edwene Gaines, and she would always be using the word good and God synonymously. So if you're in this teaching for a while and you're working on self-healing, one of the challenges or one of the opportunities that you have is to challenge yourself to see the good in this. And it's sometimes very difficult because you're in a situation where it looks like your life is working against you. And it's very easy to get into a trap of woe is me and what's happening to me, and in the conversation of what's wrong and what's missing. It's very easy to go there. Most of the world does go there. So Edwene Gaines was very helpful in that one way. She would keep on talking about not only is the kingdom of good at hand or the kingdom of God at hand, she will say that you live and you move and you have your being in this creative substance. Deepak Chopra would call it a unitary field. We live and we move and we have our being in it. We're established in it. And, I could add, the universe doesn't make junk. So all of us, every one of us are important in the sense that we are each individualizations of this one life. And within us is everything that we will ever possibly need. But it's for us to discover it. Throughout history, people have been looking for salvation. They've been looking for answers. So they've been trying to manipulate the gods, and it won't really matter what religion it is. But there's an attempt to have the universe give you something that you think is missing. And as we get into metaphysical studies, we realize, everything you're looking for is available to you. The power, the light, the creativity, all of it is available to you. Ernest Holmes said, and I repeat often, that there's power for good in the universe and you can use it. And he was really speaking of the power that's in you. So we live in it, we move in it, we have our being in it, and we recognize that this power, this love, this energy is in every living thing. In fact, it's in all things. So there's an energy. And if you slow down a little bit, if you meditate, if you quiet the mind, and if you can stop the chatter, and then you start to realize, okay, I am creating, I'm Shakespeare in my own life. I'm writing my own script. And the problem is that a lot of the time I'm writing the same story over and over again, and I'm getting the same outcome over and over again. You might just change the faces, but it seems like many of the relationships are the same. It could be that I'm playing out some drama that was in my childhood with one of my parents or both of my parents. But we have a tendency to keep recycling things until we learn the lesson that we need to learn. One of my best teachers always said to me, it might help to think of life as being like a school. And we have a whole bunch of lessons we're here to, learn and master, and to have the consciousness that the things that are happening in our lives are not happening to us in any type of punishment in any kind of way. But the things that are happening in our life are happening for us. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about that, and that rings very true to me now, because as you get a little bit older, you can have the benefit of looking in hindsight. You can think of the toughest times that you've gone through in your life. Everything that has happened, if you can have the advantage of taking what's called the long view, which I first learned in the Celestine prophecy, if you have the ability to see things from a distance, it's almost like, my goodness, I could not have done that for myself. Everything that comes to you for you. And that ties directly into another spiritual truth that we oftentimes talk about here, and it's also spoken of in other spiritual disciplines, which is every encounter that we have is a holy encounter. And it may not seem like it at the time, I can attest, as I think back on my own life, because there were times that were really painful, and I would not have thought of them as those times being beneficial when I was going through them. But if you're taking that long view that I just spoke of, that comes from the Celestine prophecy, you're looking at your life from a different vantage point. Everything that's happening is a stepping stone into a greater place of awareness. When we're talking about self-healing, we're talking about growth. And we're talking about growth and expansion. We are creative beings, and we live and move, and we have our being in this ever-expanding energy. And we open ourselves up to change. And so things come in, and they're unique to each of us. And it's really, how are you going to approach this change? If you're involved in self-healing, you're working always in mind, as we talk about. We're working always in consciousness. I can't be defeated. You can't be defeated. The universe, here's the thing. If you're one with life and one with this creative activity within you, you develop the consciousness that everything that's happening, again, is happening for you. There's a line I quote sometimes from the Course, which is, it takes great wisdom to understand that all events, happenings, and circumstances are helpful. I'll say that one again. It takes great wisdom to understand that all events, circumstances, and happenings are helpful. So what does that really mean? If you're living your life from the vantage point that I am one with my Creator, I'm one with the One, and you're developing that kind of faith and trust where you know all is well, then, born of that faith and born out of that spiritual understanding, you're going to understand that, okay, if something's coming in, that there must be some good in this. This is a stepping stone to something else. When I'm in a place where I've done some meditation, where I've done some affirmative prayer, where I'm communing with life, which is what Ernest Holmes was talking about when he said we are here to learn to live the affirmative life. What it's speaking of is being centered in an awareness that I'm connected with all that is good, that I'm a part of it. I'm an individualization of it. I am a point of awareness within it. So it is that consciousness that heals anything. So it's kind of like, okay, bring it on. Whatever's coming my way, or whatever's coming your way, you have within you the ability to transcend and to deal with anything and everything. In fact, you have the ability to transcend and go past the conditions that are in your life. I remember coming up with a saying many years ago. I believe I put it on a website when I was in Florida, and it was that saying, which I say quite often: the conditions in my life do not have consciousness. I have consciousness. Simple enough statement, right? But the idea is, okay, all the conditions are external. It could be financial, it could be a relationship, it could be, it's all kinds of things. I'm actively involved in an active life. And because I'm actively involved in an active life, there's all kinds of things going on. But the thing is, none of it really, the power isn't in the conditions. The power is always with you. You have the power. You bring the things forth by virtue of consciousness, and you also are able to deal with the things that you bring forth with your consciousness. Let me explain it another way. Your consciousness, best understood, is the totality of your awareness. Okay, it's all the things I'm consciously thinking and I'm aware of, and it's the things that are in my unconscious that are part of what I've learned. And in total, my consciousness is being mirrored in my day-to-day living. So if I want to heal my life, if I want to make improvements, if I consciously want to co-create, then I need to do what I can do in terms of changing my perceptions. I don't have any desire to create enemies. I love what Louise Hay would say in this book. You heard me say it last week, I believe. When you're thinking of other people and their behavior, okay, it's okay to talk about people's behavior. But the thing is, I don't think in terms of bad people or wrong people, because people are evolving in terms of consciousness. Same way you are, same way I am. And everyone is doing the best that they can with the information, the understanding, and the awareness that they have. So if you can have that consciousness within you, if you really can have the understanding, okay, there's no true opponent, there's nobody really in truth out to get me, then you're going to understand, you're going to have compassion. Even for the people who you might have, up to a certain point, you thought, well, these are bad people. Or I was early on taught that there aren't any bad people. There's maybe a whole lot of undesirable behavior. And there's people operating in different levels of understanding. And certainly I don't have to be best friends with them. I can step aside from them. I can avoid, hanging out with them. But I need to understand that everything I'm seeing, all that I'm seeing, I live, move, and have my being in this awareness that, God is all that there is. Or if you don't like the word God, you can replace it with about 1,000 others. You can live where you live, move, and have your being, that I'm a part of this unitary field, this divine creativity, this energy. And we can know that it responds to us. And if you're going to say life is good, and if you're going to hitch your wagon to the stars, as Emerson spoke of, which is right, if you're preoccupied with seeing the good, and if you're preoccupied with lifting people up and lifting yourself up, then before long, there's a quickening that happens in your own self-healing, in your consciousness. If you elevate your thoughts and you're preoccupied with elevating your thoughts, you will create a new world that you will walk into, and you'll be lifting countless others up as well. If I lived my life the way I might have 30 years ago, if I were preoccupied with ain't it awful and what's wrong and what people should do, and if I were operating with a lot of strong opinions about what everybody ought to do, I wouldn't be minding my own spiritual business. And that might have been me. I can remember the year. And I remembered someone saying to me decades ago, listen, you got enough work to do on yourself right now before you begin trying to change the world. And I took it in the way that it was intended. The thing about self-healing, it is really about self-healing. So we work on our attitudes and we work on our thoughts. And we can have fun with it. It doesn't have to be dreary. I mean, it's work. It's spiritual work, but it can be fun. I always invoke a saying that came from Ronald Reagan, which is, there you go again. When I find that I'm off track, and my generation would say tripping, meaning I'm in a story and I'm caught up in something about someone, I want to bring that back to me, and I would want to say to myself, okay, I'm creating this person or situation to be something. And I want to own the fact that I'm responsible for my own thinking. I want to be the guardian at the gate of my own thinking and my own thought. A religious scientist I was told years ago, a religious scientist or a person who's in this teaching like Louise Hay, you're here to be a lifter. You're here to be an applauder. And the applauding has to start first with you. First, we have to acknowledge that no, you don't have to do anything. But first, I would suggest begin with yourself and begin with self-approval. I love, accept, and approve of myself exactly as I am. Keep saying that till you believe it. I love, accept, and approve of myself exactly as I am. When we really, really love ourselves, Louise would say, then everything starts to change because your consciousness is shifting. The peace of God becomes, you're living in peace and you're becoming not bothered by what other people are doing because you're doing the work. You're doing the work on you. I have some very close friends in this teaching now, and the whole world can be falling apart, and we're not ignorant of the facts, none of us. We're really not. But our preoccupation is on keeping our consciousness in a place where we know, where we can feel, sense, and know that all is well. We recognize the first step of affirmative prayer. We recognize that there is power, and that power is within us and operating through us now. And if we can connect with that and understand that and let that knowledge inform us, it will cause us to shift our perceptions. Having the consciousness again of knowing nothing's personal, that everyone's doing the best with what they can, and so are we. So we operate in the now, and each day we're willing to release the past and forgive everyone. We're here to, if there's resentments, we want to be the first one to, let them go, right? That's the process of learning to love ourselves. When we're forgiving other people and forgiving ourselves, it allows us to step right into the present so we can have new moments with people. And that's what we're all after. So we enter into the question that I ask each week, which is, what if you could think of the past few days, maybe the past week, what has it been like? Have you been your own best friend? Have you been cheerleading yourself? If you find that you're really critical of yourself, that's really a good place to begin. Where you would say, okay, starting here, starting now, I'm going to release the need to be critical. I'm going to release the need to be critical of myself. I oftentimes talk about in the book, Louise Hay would say, just pay attention to how often you use the word should. And she said that I find when people use the word many, many times every day, she would say, I would talk to them, I would say, if you use that word a lot, it might indicate that there's a pattern of rigidity within you. And so we want to look at the ways that we use words like should and command phrases, because typically if I'm saying that you should do this, you should do that, I'm being very directive and I'm telling people what to do, and it's generally critical and it's not terrible, it's not usually received well. And we're wanting to do just the opposite. We're trying to find ways to praise ourselves and praise other people. So that's some work you can start with. So we're going to move over, and before we move over to the break, just begin the process of being mindful. So you can share when it's time for sharing, whether you've been treating yourself like you are your best friend. I was going to mention, religious scientists are people that are committed to seeing the good. There was an old story that people talk about, and the line in the end was, there must be a pony in this someplace. And so you've heard the story of there's a pony, I guess it's buried in manure, and the religious scientist is there looking for the pony. They're looking to see what's good. And there's good and there's God in everybody. And so our preoccupation is to, instead of being fault finders, which is what a lot of people do, Our preoccupation is like Edwina Gaines, to see the good, or see the God, or see the good and see the God. That's what a practitioner does. We're here to know that we live, move, and have our being in this divine substance, and this divine substance responds to us endlessly. And our focus is on paying attention to the inner dialogue. And when we see that we're getting off base, that we redirect ourselves gently. Never criticize yourself, but gently redirect yourself back to what is positive, what is true. And again, some people might think, well, you're thinking lofty thoughts, you're not reality-based, and they can say whatever they want to say. You're working on your consciousness is what you're doing, because you want to step into a world where you can live a bigger life. Ralph Waldo Emerson always advised or suggested that we hitch our wagon to the stars. And all he was saying is embrace the bigger ideas, know that you deserve the good, know that you're a part of this good, and step into that reality and release anything, any of the stuff that would suggest you're anything less than wonderful. I know for everybody on this call who's listening to this call, or who will be listening to this call in the coming weeks, that each of you are individualizations of this divine substance. And the universe is wooing you, Spirit is always wooing you, so that you can express life more vibrantly, with more love, more happiness, and more joy. And this class and this center is a place that supports you in your evolution and growth. We're not here to change anybody. The only person that can change anyone is themselves, but we're here to support everybody in altering that conversation. Any conversation that would suggest that you're anything less than wonderful, we're here to help alter that conversation so you can step into the truth that you are whole and complete and perfect. So we're going to go to the other side, and you have a chance to hear from as many people. Maybe you just want to say hi, and maybe you can talk about what it's been like the past week for you, and maybe what you want to change. So we'll see you in just a moment. Thank you.